Thank you. Hi, thank you. My name is Betty, and if you can do me a quick favor, just turn around to your neighbor and say, I am racist, and so are you. Thank you, thank you. That is not an easy statement to say because it took me a long time to say it. Let me introduce myself. I am racist, and so are you. My name is Betty, and I am the leader of SOAR. You may have seen me in hallways, in clubs, in classes, or this promotional poster. You may have also seen me in Kevin's Instagram post. Thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome.
And also as a leader of SOAR. If you know SOAR, or if you have heard of SOAR, you may think, what does SOAR do? Gather and repeat, racism is bad? Well, if that was the case, fellow SOAR officers and I would have a much easier job to do. So, you're right, SOAR does fight racism, like this. It hosts cross-cultural dialogues, it represents cultures, and do so much more. However, in case of what is racism, you might still wonder, what is it? Does it exist? How do you fight racism? So let's break it down. You have the general picture. Racism is bad. Discrimination against race is bad. However, if you go a little deeper into it, this is you and your brain, although you're much more beautiful than this simple diagram, then we judge a person instantly based on our previous data set of mankind. For instance, if I meet, CJ, for an example, or if I enter Miss Morissette's class for the first time ever, then I would use my knowledge of mankind to judge who that person is, how to talk to them, what to talk about, and how to say these things. In fact, it takes us 100 milliseconds, which is 1/10 of a second, to conclude this data. That means that if I see a person with permed hair and wrinkled skin, it only takes me 1/10 of a second to determine that, okay, I should talk maybe about the weather, or their grandchild, or Im Young-woon, the BTS of grandmas. But the problem occurs when this data is flawed. This data might be flawed in an alternate universe where I might travel to, I don't know. Their grandmas might be offended by the talks of the weather, or doesn't have grandchildren, or they might hate Im Young-woon. In that case, not only would my data set not help me at all, but it also might hurt them. I want you to realize how embedded this false data set is in our actual minds. For instance, when after the speech, you might go home and turn on Netflix as usual. You might turn on a Hollywood movie, and chances are, as shown by this graph, the lead would be white. And based on that, you would be more familiarized to the white lead, making you question the other, making you fear the unknown. And this fear is even more dramatic when you change the channel to the news. In the news, you will more likely see a black person because the statistics show that for the same crime, black people are more likely to get arrested and black people are more likely to get sentenced for longer. This means that not only are you fearing the marginalized because you don't know them, but also you are fearing them because your data set tells you that they are dangerous. This flaw in data, occurs more often than we think. And when in our society's every part, it creates a system of racism. For instance, when this data is planted in teachers' minds, it makes black preschoolers more likely to get suspended than their white counterparts. When in employers' minds, this makes them hire white people more than black people, even with the same credentials or with better ones. When planted in police's minds, this transfers to death, to police brutality, to hate crimes. While you may think that this is limited to America, this actually is in Korea. There was a survey done in 2020 that asked foreigners, does racism exist in Korea? And an overwhelming majority, 68%, said yes. I want you to think that, okay, this is not America. We don't have a history of racism like America. But I also invite you to think, what happens 100 years later? 100 years from now, what would racism in Korea look like? When there are multicultural families, when there are Koreans who are multicultural, what happens then? When there's a presidential candidate who is multicultural, who doesn't look like you, would you vote for them? I want you to think about that question because it will happen. This is the future of our country. So, what I present to you are two paths. The first one is to do nothing, to stay complacent, to let the system go on. The second choice is to actively resist against the system. This doesn't mean that you will found an NGO, that you will join multiple protests every day. It doesn't even mean that you will join SOAR. Rather, it means that in your everyday life, you will think about this system. You will think about how your action actually results in and contributes to the system. It means that when you look at the university application and you notice that, they choose Black and Latinx people more than maybe whites, or they implement a system where they can equitably select them, that you won't complain and say, it's reverse stereotype, it's reverse discrimination. Because, as you can see from the graph, while the privileged may agree that there is more privilege towards the disprivileged disagree. They say that the lifetime discrimination that I have faced is not made up by this simple strategy. It is saying that when you watch that Netflix drama after this presentation, you're saying, okay, I recognize that there has been a history of Black male leads being discouraged and not represented enough on screen. So maybe I will try out a movie with a Black lead or a Latinx lead. It is saying that when you become an employer or when you become a leader, which I know all of you will, you're going to employ an equitable measure that can alleviate this discrimination and restore equity. I present this decision not in 3 ways, but in 2 ways, because not making a decision is still a decision. You not making a decision to be an anti-racist is you being complacent with the system. So again, it doesn't have to be huge, but think about this system every day and actively make a choice that would not contribute to the system, but dismantle the system. Because after all, I am racist, so are you. Everyone is racist, but everyone can also dismantle the system. Thank you.